The state of California is having a bad year. Now, over the weekend, Graham Stephan, the finance YouTuber that I'm sure most of us know and have followed in the past, he announced that he was leaving California. As a lifelong California resident, he said that the state of the state is simply just declining too much to justify staying. That, along with traffic and increased cost of living, as well as just safety as a whole, has prompted him to leave and go to the neighboring state of Nevada. Now, I am a lifelong Texas resident. I lived in Chicago for 6 months for an internship, but other than that short period of time, I have lived in Texas my entire life. Now, funny enough, I always wanted to live in California. In fact, whenever I was in high school, I really wanted to go to UCLA until I realized that I don't have the grades or the money to go to UCLA, and so I settled on community college here in Dallas instead. And being a lifelong Texas resident, I feel as though I never really appreciated Texas for what it was until I got older. And I was always wanting to and had a desire to move to some of these more glamorized states like California because it was the sexy thing to do. So today I want to go through and I want to talk about some of the real reasons why so many people, not just Graham Stephan, are leaving California permanently. So let's get started. Now, Graham Stephan is just one of the most recent kind of people to come out and say that they are leaving the state of California, and he certainly isn't alone in it. Joe Rogan is another person who has said that he's leaving California. Tesla and Elon Musk have talked about and debated moving out of California as well. In fact, there's a lot of rumors that Tesla may move to the Round Rock, which is a suburb of Austin area. Now, overall, there is a lot of people and a lot of different industries that are looking to exit California as a state. In fact, from 2007 to 2016, 5 million people moved into California, but 6 million people moved out of California, which meant that over that period of time, there was a 1 million net loss of population in the state of California. Now, overall, there are a slew of different reasons as to why somebody may want to leave California, but in today's video, we're going to be talking about the aspect of taxes, cost of living, and overall quality of life. Now, let's first talk about taxes, because taxes is an obvious reason as to why somebody would want to leave the state of California. Now, California has a state income tax, which means that you are not only paying income tax in your state for your state taxes, but you're also paying it for your federal taxes as well, which means that you're essentially paying the same tax twice, but on just different levels. With California, they have a state income tax rate of between 1% and 13.3%, depending on what income bracket you're in, and there's a total of 10 income brackets. Now, in Graham Stephan's video, he had cited that income tax was something that he simply could not ignore any longer, and that the math associated with how much money he was spending in state income tax simply no longer justified why he should live there. In his video, he stated that he pays over $400,000 per year in state income taxes, or at least he did last year. Now, this is something that is really difficult to ignore because of the fact that depending on where you're located, you may or may not have to pay state income tax. In fact, throughout the country, there are 9 states that do not have a state income tax. These states include Alaska, Florida, South Dakota, Texas, Washington, Nevada, Wyoming, Tennessee, and New Hampshire. Meaning that, for example, Graham Stephan cited in his video that he paid $400,000 in state income taxes last year. Me being in Texas, if I was to have made the exact same amount of money as Graham Stephan last year, which I didn't, but if I did, I would have automatically made over $400,000 more than him at the end of the day because of the fact that I wouldn't have to pay state income taxes in Texas and he does in California. And Graham Stephan's point in his video was correct, the fact that at some point the math no longer makes sense. $400,000 is a ton of money, and if you can just move a state and avoid that cost altogether, I would be lying if I said I wouldn't be tempted to do the same thing. So the fact that California has a state income tax and 9 other states don't is a real reason and a really kind of no-brainer reason as to why somebody would want to move out of California, especially if they're a high enough earner. For me, even though I don't make a ton of money to where that number is just astronomical like it is with Graham Stephan, I definitely see the advantage to not having to pay it. And I'm not gonna lie whenever I say that whenever tax season hits, there is a part of me that is incredibly happy that there is no income tax being taken out of my income overall. It's a big benefit, and once you start making enough money, it's a benefit that is worth relocating for. Next, let's talk about the cost of living. Now, California is obviously known for its high cost of living, and I think that we can all agree that there is no secret to the fact that it's very expensive to live in California. But I think so often people don't fully realize how expensive it is to live in California. In fact, if you look at the different aspects of the cost of living in California versus the national average, you will see that California in almost every single category far exceeds the national average. In fact, you can see right here a graph that shows the United States national average being 100, and you can see how that compares to California on that same scale of 100. The overall cost of living in California on a scale of 100 is 149.9 versus the 100 in the United States, which means it's roughly 50% higher than the overall United States as a whole. Groceries are 105.1 versus the 100 national average. Health costs is the only category that is below the national average at 92.4. Housing is significantly higher than the national average at 239.1. The median home cost in California is $553,800 versus the $231,200 of the national average. Next is utilities, which is just slightly above the national average at 102.4. Transportation is above the national average of 133.1, and miscellaneous items is above the national average just a little bit by 103.7. But not only is just general day-to-day life expenses more expensive in the state of California, with the exception of healthcare, the housing costs are just absolutely astronomical in California. In fact, let's look at some different price comparisons showing what something will buy you in California versus some of these no state income tax states. So first we have the $250,000 to $350,000 price range. Now this is kind of considered the national average for houses, and you can see here that in California, $340,000 will buy you a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 758 square foot townhome. Now granted, this is in Los Angeles, so that would be more expensive than some of the outlying cities in California, but still that is incredibly expensive for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 750 square foot unit. In comparison, you can look at something in that same price range, but actually significantly cheaper, and that is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,400 square foot home in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, this is what that would buy you versus the 1-bedroom, 1-bath townhome. Now let's look at the $400,000 to $500,000 price point. You can see here that in California, this is again Los Angeles, a $450,000 home is 4 beds, 1 bath, and it has about 1,300 square feet. So it's still a fairly small home, even though it has a lot of rooms. You can see here that this is what it looks like. It has some old drop ceilings. It is just overall kind of an outdated house. Whereas on the flip side, we look at Tennessee, and we look at a town called Old Hickory, Tennessee, which is a suburb of Nashville, and this is what that same price point would get you. It's a $490,000 home, has 4 beds, 3 baths, and it's 3,081 square feet. Now let's look at the $750,000 to $1 million price point. Let's get as close to $750,000 as possible. And you can see here that in California, in Burbank specifically, there's a 3-bed, 1-bath house in Burbank for $719,000, and it is under 1,000 square feet. Now, this is a cute home. I like it, but is it worth $719,000? I don't know. Now, in comparison, let's look at a home in the city of Plano, Texas, which is actually my hometown. And you can see here that $750,000 gets you a 5-bedroom, 4-bath, roughly 4,700 square foot home in a overall great city. Now, overall, I understand that the home argument is really going to be dependent on where in these different states you search for. A home in California and Los Angeles is going to be significantly more expensive than a home that is up in the mountains. And I definitely understand that. But the thing that's equally as important to remember is the fact that many people move to California for those hub cities, for Los Angeles, for Santa Monica, for San Francisco. And if you're not living in those cities, then kind of what's the point of living in California? I would say that a lot of people think. Now, overall, I think that the value of a home is something that can't be ignored, and it's something that I've talked about a lot in my personal life. I have an older sister that lives in London in the UK, and before she lived in London, she lived in New York, and I always respected the fact that she loved living in a city, but I could never justify it for myself because of the fact that she was paying such a premium price for really such a low value in my eyes. Now, again, I understand that location. At the end of the day, people pay a premium for location. But for me, I would much rather pay an equal price and get much more for that price. I live in Dallas, Texas, in the Dallas, Texas area. I have a $300,000 house that has 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a huge backyard for my dogs, and a 2-car garage. And the fact is, if I was living in California, I would barely be able to afford a 1-bedroom, 1-bath townhome. And that alone would deter me from ever moving to California. So we talked about taxes, we've talked about the cost of living, but what about the overall standard of living? Because at the end of the day, this is one of the big reasons why people move to California in the first place. California and Los Angeles, more than almost any other city, is highly glamorized for the fact that it is the place to be. And though I I've never lived in California, so I can't speak from experience, I will say that I, in my opinion, don't think that California is all it's chalked up to be. The fact is that over the last few years, there has been an abundance and a big problem with homelessness. And I'm not trying to dog on people who are homeless because I definitely understand that there's a lot of factors that come into play. But being, a 26-year-old female, I would not want to live in a city where I had to walk past homeless tents and homeless people on a daily basis. In fact, this is something that I really love about the town that I grew up in, which is Plano, Texas. Plano, Texas was voted one of the safest cities in the entire United States. The standard of living in Plano is really high across the board. There is a pretty wide range of income levels, and regardless of where you're located in the city, whether it's the higher income area or the lower income area, you never feel like you're unsafe. And this is something that I really love about my hometown. But the same thing can't be said for cities like LA. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was traveling through Wyoming and Idaho and into Oregon and Seattle. And whenever I reached Oregon and Seattle, I was blown away by how big of a homeless problem they had and how there was just camps of homeless people everywhere. There was trash everywhere. There was tents everywhere. And it was something that was really unsettling for me. And so from the standpoint of safety, I could definitely understand why people wouldn't feel comfortable living in those situations. And though it is an incredibly unfortunate situation, and I definitely feel sympathy for the people that are homeless there, being somebody that is just trying to live a happy, healthy, safe life, I wouldn't want to put myself in that situation to have to face that every single day. But aside from the homeless problem and the trash problem, it's also the problem of traffic. And this is a big problem that I would absolutely hate if I lived in Los Angeles. California and Dallas are very similar in the sense that you almost always need to have a car to commute. Now, I can't really speak to how the public transport system works in California and how efficient it is, but I will say that in Dallas, the public transport system is absolutely horrible. And in Dallas, you have to have a car to get around. Otherwise, it's really difficult to travel anywhere. And I've heard the same thing is true in California to an extent, that you really have to have a car to go from place to place and to city. But the problem is, and the difference between, Dallas and LA is the fact that traffic in LA is significantly worse, which means it's going to take you significantly longer to travel the same amount of distance. In fact, Los Angeles multiple times has been rated the world's worst city for traffic congestion. Overall, this is a waste of money, it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of resources. And this is something that could easily be avoided by simply moving to another city. Overall, though, looking at these states and how they've handled COVID-19, how they've handled the economic crash, how they've handled a number of different issues, it really has made me very appreciative of Texas and how Dallas more specifically has handled things. I think that in my lifetime, Dallas has done a really great job of keeping the city clean, of keeping the standard of living quite high, and of keeping life fairly affordable. Granted, even now in Dallas, home prices are starting to rise, and it's getting more and more difficult to find a home that isn't ridiculously expensive. But with that being said, if you guys are interested in moving to Texas, as a fellow Texan, I welcome you with open arms. And if you aren't interested in moving to Texas, then I'm sure the other states will welcome you as well. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I would love to hear kind of what your thoughts are in California, what your thoughts are on kind of the things that Graham Stephan talked about in his video, and whether or not you would move out of California if you were a California resident. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.